Okay, so let's talk about lighting. So right here we have a very simple scene, just a few polygons I put together to demonstrate some of the things. And if we render by default, that's what we get. And so here in our light tab, we have our light direction that we can grab and move around. We have a number of different parameters. We have a shadow, we have a softness of this shadow that would affect the edges of it. We have its quality and various other features. So for example, if we increase the softness and click render, and you see what happens, right? Let's check our settings here. Well, we have our global illumination set to path tracing, which is what you want for most of the time. Well, let's increase the quality of our shadow softness. Well, on our shadow in general, but if you increase the softness, you want to increase the quality as well. So then you can see we can get rid of this grain. And of course, it will make the render a bit longer, so you have to keep that in mind if you have a very complex scenes. What else we have here? Well, we can change our color, the color of our light. Okay. Just like that. We can change the intensity and ambience. So if we increase the ambience, it will sort of reduce this direct light and will create like a very, well, with this intensity it's a little too much. Let's decrease the intensity but keep high ambience. Well, so you can see it basically eliminates the shadows from the scene. The light is very ambient. It's just spilled all over the scene. And so by default, intensity is on 1 and ambience on 0.2, which is pretty good. Now, let's create some artificial lights that we have here, and we will use our info tab to control them. So let's click and drag to set the initial radius of this point light, and well, just position it somewhere where we can see effect of it. And here in our info tab, right, you can see we have type as a point light. We have our attenuation, which is quadratic, in order to sort of achieve physically correct lighting. We have our units, and by default they're set to radius decay, which is fine. We have our intensity. Now, the intensity, of course, depends on the scale of your scene. And we have, again, number of parameters we can tweak. Okay, so we have our light. Let's have a look how it looks. Let's select the right view. Here we are. Okay, so you can see we are getting some shadow there, but the intensity of our overall light is too high. Let's decrease it so we have our point light more visible. All right, so now you can see that this point light creates some cast shadow. Let's re-render it. All right, now it's more clear, right? So you can see this mesh is casting a shadow on the wall there. Let's increase it a little bit. Right, so here we are. But you can see that this shadow is very sharp, right? So again, here we also have shadow softness and then shadow quality. So they are pretty much the equivalents of these two, this shadow and softness in our global light. And they will take care of this shadow for us a little bit. Right, so you can see it worked a little bit, right? It's already a little bit softer than the previous one. Right? You can see it took this edge of it, sort of literally. Okay. And now we can, of course, increase the softness. And again, how much you have to increase it, it depends on your objects, your lights, the distribution, the scale of the scene. Okay, we can of course change this light's color as well. Let's reduce the color of this global light, this default light, to white so we can see it more clearly. And then we have this warm yellowish light. And what else? Well, we can of course tweak the intensity. So that of course all depends what kind of effect. Now we can see this nice soft shadow now. So all depends what kind of effect you want to achieve, obviously, and what is your light supposed to simulate. Okay, so this was our point light. Now let's take a look at something else. So let's create a spotlight. So again, we click and we drag to sort of show which direction we want our spotlight to face. And again, we have the same things. We have this type, attenuation. So again, let's select the right view and render it. And we can see, again, we have this sort of result. Let's increase the softness of the light itself, which will create this soft fall off. And again, let's increase the shadow softness and shadow quality. Now we can adjust the angle of it so it's not too wide. Okay, let's see how this would look like. Right, and you can see it's much softer. Looks much better now. We can actually decrease the softness of this light itself so it's not going to be so spilled all over the place. Okay, and that's much better now. Right, so that's basically our spotlight. And we have a number of other lights here, which I'd encourage you to try and play with them a little bit. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you a little trick you can do with the light, any type of them actually. So let's create a simple point light. Let's give it some color, some quite vivid color. And let's see how it looks. Okay, so we have it in our scene. Now what we want to do now is go down the bottom, and here we have a volume light attribute. Now if we check this volume light, you see what happens. It creates this sort of preview sphere, basically telling us how far it reaches. It's because this auto function is turned on. You can turn it off and you can type manually how far you want it to reach. If you type exactly the intensity, the same number, it will reach as far as, well, its intensity. So basically you can keep playing with this, and what it does is when you render it, you can see that basically it gives like a almost physical volume to the light. Right, so depending on the intensity of your volume light attribute and intensity of your light itself, this center of the light, this sort of core of this light, will be more or less visible. It will be smaller or bigger and denser, right, this part. So that really depends, right? As you can see, like if we tweak it like that, the intensity at 200, but the volume light distance at 600, it gives us result like that. And it's pretty cool feature which you can use in design as well. Let's decrease the intensity of the light even more and increase the intensity more, and you see what it gives us, right? It looks like a some sort of a futuristic floor light or something, right? So, or it could be some sort of a, I don't know, magic effect. You can use it pretty creatively. It really depends on what you're going after. Let's try to amplify this even more. Let's go back to 100% and render it. Right, so now you can really see the result. And of course we would have to boost our render options to sort of get rid of that noise, but I think you get the idea. Okay, and now also let's take a look at image-based lighting. Right, because here we have just a cube standing on a plane, and I assigned like a generic metal material to it. So if we render it, right, this is this material, which is just like a basic texture with some reflectivity. But let's go to this background tab, because with default light, well, it looks the way it looks. So let's try to make it look a little better. Let's open our Shade Explorer, go to the background, and here by default we have a large number of HDR images that we can use. So let's say pick, I don't know, whichever. Okay, this one. So let's double click it and it will automatically load it as a background. If you want to tweak it again, here we have a lighting factor which sort of increases the overall strength of it. What we can else tweak here, we can select what area it's going to cover. We can choose how is it projected. Is it a light probe or a cube map? That depends on the shape really of this image. We can sort of change its orientation, right? So that depends on how we want to light our scene, from which way the lighting of our scene is supposed to be coming from, right? So let's just see how it's gonna look right now. Now, in order to see it better, we have to decrease the intensity of our global light, right? Otherwise it will overpower this image-based lighting. So let's decrease the shadows here. Let's decrease the intensity. I like to leave a little bit, just so it sort of fills some areas where the IBL doesn't reach, but it definitely has to be reduced. Now here in our render settings, let's set it to path tracing, and let's make sure that our GI is also set to path tracing. Okay, now we have a number of options that we can tweak to make it look better, but well, for now, maybe let's increase our these first two options there, and we'll see how it's gonna look. We don't need to go crazy right now. Let's just test it. And we can see we have this image as a background by default, and we have the result of our light. Now we can see the comparison between just the default one and the IBL. So we have the reflected environment, right? We have the colors. Let's go to the options here, and first of all, here in basics, we can uncheck this render background. So that way we don't have this image anymore in the background. We just have a selected color. In this case we have black. So that allows us to see it a little better. Okay, all right, so that's essentially the basic way to set it up. Now, depending on the strength of your IBL, you may want to add additional lights to your scene just to sort of emphasize it or help it out a little bit. So let's create here additional light, just a directional light. Let's pick, let's say, attenuation linear. We can give it some color, just maybe, I don't know, some warm color, a little bit, sort of. Let's say that this is maybe some light coming from the sun, because we don't want to use the global light. Let's edit a bit of softness, some soft shadows. All right, I guess that would do. And okay, let's render it. And so we can see this, it lights the cube just ever so slightly. We can increase the intensity a little bit. Okay, so it makes it a little bit brighter. Right, but the whole idea here is that this light is only supposed to sort of aid this image-based lighting. It shouldn't be the main source. All right, so that's basically how it looks like. You can see the progression, right, from darkest to the brightest, right? So you can see it doesn't overpower it, it just sort of aids this background image that serves as a light source. We can also, well, not also, we should sort of match the light coming on this image, the direction of the light coming on the image to the direction of any support lights that we create, like in this case. Right? So if the light is coming from, let's say, the opposite direction, we should turn and adjust the lighting and any lighting that we've created additionally. So it doesn't illuminate the scene from, for example, opposite direction. And we can also increase the lighting factor a little bit, just to help it a little bit, just to brighten it. All right, so that's pretty much the basics when it comes to image-based lighting.